blades all hardened and tempered. This is what they'll look like once they've come out of the hardening and tempering, so all the heat treating processes, black and grubby where all the burnt oil is on them. So now what we need to do is clean up the faces, all these faces, and all the edges in little gaps and everything, and then we can move on to the grinding of the bevel. The reason why I clean up the faces first is so that they sit on the grinding jig flat, nice and flat, rather than having possible bits of scale that are holding them slightly off or otherwise getting in the way of stuff, basically. What I do use to clean up the faces is the same as the previous step after the drilling, which is using the trusty 3-inch belt sander over there, here. Because they're a bit harder now, what I normally do is start off with an 80 grit and then work down to the 120s, 150s, somewhere around there, and then move on to either 220s or 320s, depending on what sort of finish you need for it. So quite often a 150 or 120 grit will get you quite a nice finish on the blade, on the steel, so 9 times out of 10 that should be fine. So I'll get on with those then. I've now finished grinding the, smoothing the faces off now. Gone down to 120, 120 grit on the belts. Got all of those done, so now I need to finish off the grinds. Exactly the same as starting the grinds, just take it all the way down to the middle on each side now. I've now got the 80 grit belt on the grinder, and going to start grinding the belts away. May have to adjust the tracking again, because occasionally each belt is ever so slightly different on its tracking characteristics, but it shouldn't be far off at all. Another tip as well, with the belts you use for the face grinding, if you, there we go. There are a couple of different styles of belt you can get. Where are we? Over here somewhere. There is this sort, which has got a lap joint on it, and that'll have a slight ridge where the belt is joined together, the ends are, and when you're grinding that will tend to bounce a bit. So I tend not to use those as much as I can, and I use these sort, which are butt jointed. Not sure if you can see that at all. It's got sort of a wavy line that joins it, and a bit of like foil sort of material that bonds it together at the back, and that's a lot smoother. You won't feel the jump as it runs around. Exactly the same with the big belts on the grinder as well. These are all butt jointed. I don't think I've got any of the lap jointed ones at all, because they're pretty poor quality really, the lap jointed ones for these. So that's just something to bear in mind when you're machining steel, or anything else really for that matter. I've now run these over the grinder again at a 120 grit after the 60 grit, and now what I'm going to do is run a 240 grit belt on this small belt sander. Before we do that, we've got to make sure that the platen is at exactly the same angle as the other belt grinder, which this one is, because it never changes. This one I don't adjust this at all, and that just makes sure that the jig is going to grind it along exactly the same line or same angle. So we'll get 240 belt. And Unfortunately, this one is a lap jointed belt, not butt jointed belt, but it's pretty smooth transition on this one. And basically all this does is it puts a bit more of a polished edge on the edge here, and brings the edge down to a slightly finer, sharper edge. And then after that it's polishing the blade and then stropping the bevel. Right, all these bevels have been run over at 240 grit now. I'm sure you can see that. A bit more polished now. Now what we've got to do is polish the faces of the knife, and what I use for that is quite simply a drill in a drill stand that's clamped in a vise. I have got polishing mops for the bench grinders, but I find this easier to use as it's a smaller wheel and you can adjust the speed of it a lot easier, and because it spins the same way, just need to run it on the bottom and pull it away. And I use Autosol metal polish for this sort of thing, which I find does really well actually. Gives much better results than a lot of the other polishes I've tried that are specifically designed for sort of carbon steels or whatnot. So you don't need to use a lot, just put a bit on to the blade, like that. No, that's probably a bit too much actually for this little blade, and smear it around. So it doesn't matter if you have too much on there, it's not going to do any damage. Always put it on the other side as well. Now bearing in mind at this point the knives are pretty sharp, so you don't want to run your finger along the blade, on the edge of it, so because you will cut yourself, and nobody wants that, especially not your doctor. No, you don't need to have this set at ridiculously high speed.